The whole town told him not to let a young widow into his cabin. They warned that people would talk, that his name would be ruined, and that kindness always came with a price. But the lonely mountain man looked at the shivering mother clutching her baby, and the little boy trembling beside her, then quietly removed his hat and said, "I've got room by the fire, and I don't care what folks say." That one sentence changed 4 lives forever. Stay until the end, because this unforgettable Wild West story proves that one act of courage can warm hearts even in the coldest winter. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every like helps us bring more heartwarming Wild West stories filled with hope, courage, and unforgettable endings. The first snow had fallen long before sunset, covering the mountain trails with a blanket of white that swallowed every footprint almost as quickly as it appeared. Elias Turner had spent the entire day chopping firewood beside his lonely log cabin nestled high in the Rockies. At 42, the mountain man had grown used to silence. Ever since fever had taken his wife years before, he had spoken more to his horses and the pine trees than to another human being. His cabin was humble, built from rough, hewn logs with smoke curling gently from the stone chimney. Inside waited only a warm fire, a kettle of venison stew, and another lonely evening. Yet Elias had never allowed hardship to harden his heart. His father had once told him, "A man's wealth isn't measured by what he keeps but by what he's willing to give away." Those words had become the law by which he lived. As darkness settled across the mountains, Elias noticed movement beyond the fence. At first, he thought it was another wandering deer searching for food beneath the snow. Then he saw the outline of a woman wrapped in a faded red shawl. She carried a baby tightly against her chest while a little boy, no older than 6, struggled to keep up through the snowdrifts. Their clothes were soaked, their faces pale, and exhaustion showed in every slow step they took. When they reached the gate, the woman hesitated. Pride fought against desperation in her tired eyes. "My name is Sarah," she whispered. "I don't suppose you've seen an empty barn or abandoned shed nearby." Elias looked from the frightened little boy to the sleeping infant, whose tiny face peeked from beneath a worn blanket. Snowflakes rested on the baby's eyelashes. "You'll freeze before morning," he said quietly. Sarah lowered her eyes. "Folks in town told me no one would take us in." Elias glanced toward his glowing cabin. He knew exactly what the townspeople would say if a widow spent the night beneath his roof. They would whisper, they would judge, they always did. He opened the gate anyway. "I've got room by the fire," he said with calm certainty. "I don't care what folks say." Sarah stared at him, unable to believe someone had chosen kindness over reputation. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. Inside the cabin, warmth surrounded the children immediately. Elias placed more wood onto the fire, heated fresh stew, and poured warm milk for the little boy. The child smiled for the first time in days. The baby slept peacefully beside the fireplace while Sarah silently cried. Not because of fear anymore, but because after weeks of rejection, someone had finally treated her like family instead of a burden. Outside the wind howled through the mountains, but inside the tiny cabin, hope quietly returned. Morning sunlight reflected across the snow-covered valley, making the mountains shine like silver beneath a bright blue sky. Sarah woke before dawn, embarrassed that a stranger had sacrificed his privacy for her family. She quietly swept the cabin, prepared breakfast from the small supplies she found, and patched one of Elias's worn shirts while the children still slept. When Elias returned from feeding the horses, he stopped in surprise. The cabin had never looked so warm or alive. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. Sarah smiled softly. "I don't want charity, I only want to earn every kindness." From that day forward, they worked side by side. Elias repaired the broken chicken coop, while Sarah baked fresh bread, mended blankets, and filled the lonely cabin with laughter once again. The little boy followed Elias everywhere, learning how to split firewood and care for the horses. The baby giggled whenever the mountain man lifted her high into the air, and each laugh slowly melted the loneliness that had lived inside him for years. But not everyone approved. When Elias rode into town for supplies, several ranchers smirked as he entered the general store. "So," one man sneered, "heard you've taken yourself a widow." Another laughed, "Funny how lonely winters change a man's standards." Elias calmly placed flour, coffee and medicine on the counter. "I gave shelter to children who would have frozen," he answered. "If that offends anyone, that's their burden, not mine." His words silenced the room. The shopkeeper who had watched everything unfold quietly, added an extra sack of potatoes to Elias's wagon. "You reminded us what decent men are supposed to do," he admitted. Slowly, the town's whispers began to change. Instead of mocking the mountain man, neighbors started bringing blankets, milk, and warm clothes to the cabin. One family's courage inspired another. Sarah watched these unexpected acts of generosity with tears in her eyes. She realized kindness was contagious when someone was brave enough to begin. As Christmas approached, the cabin transformed into a true home. Handmade decorations hung above the fireplace, the little boy carved wooden ornaments beside Elias, and the baby's laughter echoed through every room. Yet, neither Sarah nor Elias spoke about the growing affection between them. Both carried wounds from the past. Both feared losing another family. Still, every glance they shared revealed what words could not. A fierce blizzard arrived just before Christmas, burying the valley beneath towering drifts of snow. Travel became impossible, and many ranches found themselves trapped without enough firewood or food. Elias spent 2 exhausting days helping elderly neighbors dig paths through the snow, while Sarah organized meals for struggling families, using everything they had stored. Though they possessed little, they refused to keep more than others needed. On Christmas Eve, nearly the entire valley gathered inside the small mountain church once the storm finally eased. The pastor stood before the crowd and spoke about generosity, courage, and the quiet heroes who changed lives without seeking praise. Then he called Elias and Sarah forward. Months ago, the pastor said, many of us turned this widow away because we feared gossip more than doing what was right. One mountain man showed greater courage than all of us combined. The church fell silent. The same ranchers who had mocked Elias stood and apologized publicly. Several admitted they had been ashamed ever since hearing what he had done. Together, they presented Sarah with legal papers restoring ownership of a small abandoned farm that townspeople had repaired as a Christmas gift. They had worked together in secret for weeks, inspired by the mountain man's example. Sarah broke into tears. She turned toward Elias. "You gave us warmth when we had nothing," she whispered. "You gave my children hope, and you gave me a reason to believe in tomorrow." The little boy tugged gently on Elias's coat. "Will you always stay with us?" Elias knelt, smiling through misty eyes. "If your mama will have me, I'd never want to leave." Sarah reached for his hand. "I thought we came here searching for shelter," she said softly. "Instead, we found home." The church erupted into joyful applause as snow drifted gently outside the windows. Months later, wedding bells echoed across the mountains. The lonely cabin became a place filled with laughter, children, neighbors, and endless warmth. Travelers passing through often heard the story of the mountain man who ignored gossip to save strangers from the cold. His greatest legacy was never the cabin he built or the land he owned. It was the family his kindness created. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who still believes that kindness is stronger than fear. Until next time, remember, one warm fire and one compassionate heart can change a life forever.